So I've been putting this video off for a very long time, and I've been pressured into doing this by one of my viewers who goes by the name of Magnum A with a 4. And I have to thank you for putting me in this position because I have been wanting to do this video for a long time as to how to actually get a nicer sound out of your TWS earphones with the equalizer. And it's not as simple as you'd think. So today I'm paired with the JBL 230NC, and you can also use this method with a whole bunch of other TWS earphones as well. If you are using a wired set of headphones, you can also use this method, but I won't recommend these same functions being applied to speakers in rooms because those will operate on a slightly different principle. I am not going to be talking about wavelet today because that's a separate entity altogether. I know a lot of you do like wavelet and it does function pretty well. I do have to spend a little more time with it before I speak about that specific app, but today I'm going to be speaking about how you can tweak the EQ setting with the JBL 230NC within the JBL app itself. So without much further ado, let's jump straight into the JBL app now. Over here, if you look into the app, you do have the equalizer setting. If you have the JBL app on your phones, you'll know exactly how this looks. Now, right now, of course, you've got the jazz, vocal, bass, club, and studio functions, which have their own sort of characteristics to your sound. And the other JBL earphones I've used also do have slightly different EQ settings. Now, I'm not going to be talking about the presets. I have spoken about these in the in-depth review with the JBL 230NC. I am going to speak about the manual setting in particular, and what JBL has done in particular. They've given you multiple different things you can do. It's not just a 3-band EQ where you can tweak 3 specific bands. You can keep adding multiple bands or frequencies you want to tweak it, which is quite impressive for an inbuilt app. Now, what's going to happen is what you have most probably realized while operating the EQ setting on your phone is, I'm sure a lot of you have said, hey, I want loudness, I want more richness in the highs, I want more detail in the mids, and I want more bass. So a lot of you will do this. You're going to tweak certain frequencies as per what you want. Now, you're not wrong in thinking this because essentially this is doing what you want. You are tweaking the highs, mids, and lows. But let me give you, for example, if you just tweak the highs and pull the highs up like this and pull down the mids and the rest is more or less flat, this is the sound you're going to hear. I'm tweaking the audio in the video right now to show you that this is how a voice will come through. So you will be tweaking the higher range in the vocals as well as instruments, whereas if you tweak just the mids, you're getting a peak in the mid. So this will become a lot more shrill in the mid range. So you're going to have clearer podcasts. So there are a lot of inbuilt apps that in fact include podcast EQs, which this is exactly what it will do to the sound in the mids. Now, if you flatten the mids and boost the bass, you're going to get a lot of lower frequencies that will be thumping, or they'll be booming a lot more. Now, the tendency for doing this in particular is the minute you accentuate the low frequencies, it tends to drown out the mids because end of the day you have one driver that's doing all the effort. So if it's asked to handle more load in the bass, your mids and highs usually get swallowed up a bit. Now, these are the issues you're most likely facing. So another major issue that a lot of people may not realize while they're tweaking the equalizers like this is the fact that yes, it'll be louder. You can tweak your volume, you can crank your volume all the way up. Which I wouldn't recommend. I'll always say don't go above, I'd say maybe 45 or 50%. I found that to be a sweet spot with the JBL 230 in particular. I've never really gone past say maximum 55-60% because I don't want to damage my ears. So I would recommend you do the same. Don't take it above 50. Now, if you want a balanced sound, in fact, this is something that Yamaha does with something they call listening care. They at low volumes have slightly boosted highs and slightly boosted bass so that your sound sounds more or less balanced. So mid-range normally doesn't suffer as much with lower volumes. So they've tweaked that. So what you can do also is slightly tweak your bass and your trebles and leave your mids low down. So you don't have to necessarily crank the volume up to hear these frequencies. But what I would recommend instead to preserve your hearing and maybe expect a little more longevity on any hardware you're using, whether it's wired or even wireless earphones, if you find something lacking, in the sense, if you find the bass lacking, try this instead. Instead of cranking your bass up, you'll see on the screen here it says plus 4 dB, plus 5 and plus 6 dB. Instead of cranking it up, leave it at 0 dB and instead bring your mids down to, let's say, -1, -2, -3 dB. This is something you need to play around with. This is something that you need to see whether it suits you or not. And likewise, if you find there to be a recess in the highs, tweak your highs up slightly, but I wouldn't say take it anything more than 1 dB. Leave it flat to begin with and see how it works. Now, this is not something you're going to realize immediately because obviously you've been exposed to tweaking your EQ a little too high. So in this case, let your ears acclimate, sit and listen to this EQ setting for a little while. If you want to increase the volume, you can increase the volume for sure, because what happens is when you are cranking your EQ up to +4 and +6 dB, you are heading into a range of immense distortion. So in fact, what a lot of high-res players do is if you go into the inbuilt EQ in those players, the minute you activate an EQ, there's a decibel level drop. So the overall output of the amp comes down. So a big reason why it distorts in those cases when you don't have it dropping the decibel levels is because you're overloading the amp is essentially what is going on. So this is a safe way to ensure that you don't put an unnecessary load on the amp that's driving your earphones, whether they're wired or wireless. So after you do this, you can try tweaking, let's say, the bass by another 1 or 2 dB or bring it back down, and then tweak your mids and tweak your highs. So if you keep them lower down, you're avoiding distortion completely. And then when you tweak your volume, you can get a higher loudness without hitting distortion. So this is pretty much the secret that you can try with your wireless earphones or wired headphones or wired IEMs. This should give you a more controlled output from the set of earphones you have. In fact, I've found that when I do this in the manual setting, I do prefer the sound with some tweaks I do over here compared to the inbuilt EQs. So now usually I have my own preferences. Now I'm not going to tell you what's the best EQ out there for the JBL 230NC and other wireless earphones, for the sole reason that you and I and whoever else that exists out there has a very different ear to me and to you. So everyone is going to hear audio slightly differently. So there's no point saying that, hey, this is the best, and if this is what's the best for me, it's the best for you. That's not really the situation. So I'd say spend some time on different EQs, see what kind of sound you prefer the most. For all you know, for different genres, in fact, you might prefer different EQs completely. So for EDM, you might want thrashing bass, whereas if you're listening to jazz, you're not going to want that kind of elevation in the bass. So it's about finding your taste and your preference in your personal sound, because at the end of the day, there's only one person who really needs to enjoy your earphones, and that is you and nobody else. So take your time in figuring out what EQ works best for you. And I hope that this advice really does help you. If it does, let me know in the comments below if this has benefited you and you find your earphones to sound a little sweeter overall. But remember to spend some time. Don't just jump to conclusions immediately. Spend some time with it, see what works for you. And if you can avoid that distortion, your earphones are bound to sound a lot better to you. So I hope this video has helped you in some way or the other. And if you would like to support the channel, I'm sure you know exactly how to. But of course, thank you for tuning into Paul's POV for some sound advice.